Coming up in our newscast tonight. Key officials from Pyongyang and Washington are on the move and hinting at a possible meeting in the host city of the Kim-Trump summit soon. Having already laid out what each side wants, they'll focus on finalizing negotiations on denuclearization and corresponding measures. President Moon Jae-in introduces his action plans to build a more inclusive nation. They involve providing a sturdy social safety net and quality social services. The day of the first full moon, according to the lunar calendar, is celebrated in traditional fashion here in South Korea. Various interesting rituals are held and games are played to wish for good luck and health. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. According to the nation's top office, working-level meetings between North Korea and the U.S. will start again soon this week. Already, we are seeing signs of related officials on the move. Lee Ji-won has our top story.
North Korea's Special Representative for U.S. Affairs Kim Hyok-chol is on his way to Hanoi to continue negotiations with his counterpart ahead of Chairman Kim Jong-un and President Donald Trump's summit next week. According to Seoul-based Yonhap news agency, the working-level official and his delegates arrived in Beijing for a stopover early Tuesday and are expected to fly to Hanoi on Wednesday. Together with Kim is Choi Kang-il, North Korea's Deputy Director General for North American Affairs, and Kim Sung-hye, head of North Korea's United Front Department. But his U.S. counterpart Stephen Biegun is expected to leave Washington on Wednesday, arriving a bit later than Kim, according to Yonhap sources. That would mean the two working-level officials could meet as early as Friday. The sit-down is expected to be where Kim and Biegun finalize their negotiations on denuclearization and the corresponding measures. Biegun had reportedly said that his meeting with Kim earlier in the month was a chance for both sides to fully disclose what they each want, and that narrowing their differences will start from the next round. The talks will center around what concrete denuclearization steps the North is willing to take, including the verified dismantlement of its Yongbyon nuclear facility, versus what the U.S. will offer in return, such as Pyongyang's much-coveted sanctions relief. But before their meeting, there's speculation that lower-level officials might meet first with Deputy Assistant Secretary for East Asian and Pacific Affairs Alex Wong already in Vietnam, according to AFP. If that's the case, Wong's counterpart is expected to be Park Chol, the vice chairman of the Korean Asia-Pacific Peace Committee, who was part of the delegation to Washington last month. But in the meantime, Park is assisting the North's protocol chief Kim Chang-sun. They arrived in Hanoi on Saturday and have since been stopping by places, including the Vietnamese Foreign Ministry early on Tuesday. It's still unclear whether the two sides have officially started fine-tuning the summit details. But they met in front of the Hanoi Opera House over the weekend, prompting guesses that the leaders might enjoy a special performance together. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Pyongyang and Washington are reportedly discussing exchanging liaison officers, a move that could contribute significantly to improving bilateral ties. Oh Jung-hee zooms in on the possibility of this subject being included in the next summit agreement, as well as how other U.S. corresponding measures are coming along.
Citing two sources familiar with the developments, CNN reported on Monday that North Korea and the U.S. are discussing exchanging liaison officers. If the plan were to move forward, the report says, Washington would send several liaison officers to set up office in North Korea, and a senior diplomat who speaks Korean would be leading the delegation. The U.S. State Department has declined to comment on the report, but a South Korean expert says it's highly likely that the liaison office issue will be covered at the upcoming summit. At their previous summit in Singapore last year, Pyongyang and Washington agreed to establish new relations and build a lasting peace on the Korean peninsula.
If Mr. Kim Jong-un declines the offer from Washington for establishing liaison offices in both countries, then it will greatly weaken the claims made by both Korean governments that Kim Jong-un has been proven unequivocally and unquestionably determined to leading his country in totally new directions. If Kim Jong-un is not ready to take this step, then how can the leadership be trusted?
North Korea and the U.S. setting up liaison offices has been mentioned by South Korea's President Moon Jae-in and Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa as one of the actions the U.S. could take in return for the North's denuclearization steps. Other possible U.S. corresponding measures they've suggested are providing humanitarian assistance to North Korea and declaring a formal end to the Korean War. Washington is trying to lower its bar on providing humanitarian aid to Pyongyang, currently reviewing its policy on sanctions waivers and travel exemptions. Formally ending the Korean War through the upcoming summit seems difficult, as there has been not enough communication on that with South Korea and China. Instead of that, Washington has reportedly suggested to North Korea adopting a non-aggression pact, but we can't know for sure what Washington will offer Pyongyang until the results of the summit are out. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
In less than 2 weeks, the summit is really happening, but it wasn't smooth sailing to get to this point. Kan Young-woo helped refresh our memory of the diplomatic twists and turns the two sides went through since their leaders' maiden meeting.
On June 12, 2018, the world witnessed what many had once considered impossible, a face-to-face meeting between a North Korean leader and a sitting U.S. president. At the historic summit in Singapore, Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump agreed to establish new relations for peace and prosperity. Pyongyang reaffirmed its commitment to work toward complete denuclearization in exchange for security guarantees from the U.S. The two leaders also agreed to the repatriation of the remains of American soldiers killed during the Korean War. Following the Singapore summit, President Trump announced the U.S. would suspend joint military drills with South Korea, which have been frequently criticized by the North. As a result, large-scale exercises have been put on ice while small drills continued. Pyongyang responded by sending back 55 cases believed to contain the remains of U.S. troops killed during the Korean War. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has made 2 official trips to Pyongyang since the Singapore summit. Pompeo's first visit last July was largely viewed as a failure as North Korea condemned the U.S. delegation for making gangster-like demands of the regime's denuclearization. But Pompeo's next trip in October was better than the first, indicating some progress was being made. After the remainder of 2018 did not see concrete steps taken towards the North's complete denuclearization, President Trump met in January with North Korean officials at the White House. And as Trump announced during his State of the Union address on February 6th that there would be a second North Korea-U.S. summit, negotiators from the North and the U.S. met in Pyongyang to discuss the summit agenda and logistical details. Kim and Trump are scheduled to meet for the second time from February 27th to 28th in Hanoi to further discuss North Korea's denuclearization in exchange for corresponding measures from the U.S. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
It's the day of the first full moon of the lunar calendar, also known as Jeongwol Daeborum in Korea. People from across the country gather in their region with families and friends to celebrate the occasion. We go straight to our Won Jung-wan standing by at a traditional village in Seoul. Hey Jung-wan, the festive atmosphere must be peaking over there.
Hey Daniel, as you can see behind me, a moon house, or daljib in Korean, which was made out of a huge heap of straws, has burned down nicely. When the moon was on the rise, a daljib, which was made out of a huge straws, was burned down nicely, and to people to get rid of misfortune and bring good luck for the people. The traditional belief is that the way the daljib burns foretells how the year's harvest will turn out. If it burns steadily and doesn't fall apart, then there will be a good harvest. And in fact, this tailchip burned down nicely, so hopefully Koreans will have a good harvest this year. In addition to this event, people have gathered here at Seoul's Namsan-gol, Hanok village, since the afternoon to celebrate with traditional games and rituals. Jeongol Daeburum is an important day for Koreans, so they do this to wish for good luck and health throughout the year. To tell you some of the well-known traditions, Koreans crack these shells of nuts such as walnuts and peanuts with their teeth or tools. In Korean, this is called burom, and it's believed that this ritual can help prevent boils on the skin and keep one's teeth healthy. But besides nuts, Koreans also eat seasoned vegetables and cooked 5-grain rice, as it is believed that sharing these dishes with others bring good luck throughout the year. And for those of you who have missed the event, the full moon is still up in the air, so you can just go out with your family members and your loved ones to just enjoy the full moon and wish for the best luck a year ahead. That's all from me today. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, thank you, Jong-an. Enjoy your nuts and the moon today. Heavy snow advisories were lifted for major cities across the country. Come Wednesday, warmer conditions are expected. For the updates on the weather, we turn to our Kim Da-mi.
Heavy snow advisories have been lifted for major cities, including Seoul, Incheon, and Sejong, as of 11:30 a.m. local time. The capital city was coated with 3 centimeters of snow. 5 centimeters of snow fell in Cheonan City, and 4.2 centimeters fell in Incheon. Heavy snow advisories are issued when there's more than 5 centimeters of snow expected within 24 hours. Despite the icy weather, traffic during commuting hours was not too hectic thanks to citizens' active use of public transports. While it was snowy in the north, the southern parts of the country saw some rain, with 10 to 40 millimeters of rain on Jeju Island. The sky has cleared up from earlier, and the first full moon of the lunar year will be seen in between the clouds tonight. After a rainy and snowy day, the weather is expected to get much warmer starting Wednesday.
A migratory anticyclone from China will cause warmer air. The weather will then be warmer than the annual average temperature, with Wednesday reaching 5 degrees Celsius and Thursday reaching between 8 and 10 degrees Celsius.
The rain and snow have stopped in the northern and central regions, but drivers and pedestrians are still advised to stay cautious on the slippery roads. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in called for bipartisan support on North Korea diplomacy amid a growing factional conflict looming within the U.S. over escalating distrust of Pyongyang. The remark came during his meeting with members of a parliamentary delegation that traveled to the states last month. The South Korean leader extended his appreciation to the team for being present in the U.S. when New York adopted a resolution recognizing March 1st as the day of Korea's historic independence movement and establishing the Yugwan-sun Awards, named after the iconic independence fighter, which will be given to high school girls who demonstrated great leadership and embody the spirit of sacrifice. The two Koreas continue close consultations to realize the goals set in September's inter-Korean military agreement. During a regular press briefing, Defense Ministry spokesperson Choi Hyun-soo pointed out Seoul and Pyongyang are closely discussing matters, including ways for both sides to patrol the joint security area in the demilitarized zone together. Choi added the two sides are also focused on forming an inter-Korean joint military committee to discuss significant military issues, such as large-scale drills and military buildups. Building an inclusive nation has been President Moon Jae-in's key campaign pledge. To deliver on the promise, he shared his blueprint to move forward in that direction. The goal is to allow every citizen to enjoy a basic standard of living by the year 2022. Shin Se-min has the latest from the nation's top office.
Plans to enable all Koreans to enjoy a basic standard of living. President Moon Jae-in following through on his campaign promise to build an inclusive nation in which people can enjoy their right to a decent life. And to do so, he introduced 4 action plans. Breaking those down, a sturdier social safety net and quality social services. 2, investing in individuals, the source of technological advancement. 3, creating better working opportunities free of prejudice and discrimination. And lastly, making free time a part of people's daily lives, enabling them to spend more time with their children without a loss of income.
오늘 발표된 계획이 차질 없이 추진되면 2022년이면 유아부터 어르신까지 또 노동자부터 자영업과 소상공인까지 또 장애가 있어도 불편하지 않게 우리 국민이라면 누구나 남녀노소 없이 기본 생활을 누릴 수 있게 됩니다.
The plan revealed today calls for an expansion of childcare allowances to all kids under the age of 7, up from the current 6, and boosting health insurance coverage. The president stressed again that without innovative growth, it'll be hard to build a nation that's inclusive, and that without inclusion, there can be no innovative growth. Calling for legislative support from the parliament, the president expressed confidence that an inclusive nation built through strength and virtue of the people will be a model for the world. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Production continues to grow in the local automobile industry for the second straight month. January's robust numbers comes partly thanks to the popularity of new SUVs and electric vehicles. Kim Ji-yeon sheds light on this welcome development.
Provisional data released by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy on Tuesday showed that the number of auto units produced in Korea increased by nearly 10% from the same period last year to more than 354,300 units last month, thanks to the popularity of newly introduced models and early production of vehicles ahead of Seollal, or the traditional Lunar New Year holiday, which was celebrated in February. Increases in Korean auto exports also helped, which increased by nearly 13% on year to record more than 213,600 units. It was buoyed by the popularity of sports utility vehicles and eco-friendly cars in the North American market as well as Europe. In particular, foreign demand of Hyundai Motors Kona EVs and Kia Motors Nira EVs and hybrid electric vehicles surged in January. Auto component exports also shot up by nearly 13% on year to record more than $2 billion last month. In the local market, the Hyundai Palisade, the largest SUV model by Hyundai Motor, the automaker's Genesis G90 luxury sedan, and a Santa Fe SUV model have led to increased auto sales last month. Auto imports, meanwhile, fell by nearly 15% on year to record just over 18.7 thousand units due to falling diesel car imports. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
A presidential commission mediating between government, management, and labor announced an agreement is reached to expand the flexible working system. Currently, the weekly hours are not to exceed 52, but up to 64 hours per week are allowed when necessary, as employees reduce their hours during other weeks over a 3-month period. That period will be increased from 3 months to 6, allowing greater flexibility for businesses, some of whom complained of experiencing difficulty adjusting to changes. To prevent overwork and health problems, 11 straight hours of break will be provided, and the deal will include measures to preserve workers' wages. Last year, South Korea managed to avoid the Trump administration's steel duties and instead agreed on quotas. At the time, it was considered a win for Seoul, but a new report suggests otherwise. Ko Ryun-hee explains further.
It's been almost a year since the South Korean government agreed to the Trump administration's steel import quotas. But latest analysis by the Washington office of the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency shows South Korea's steel exports to U.S. actually dropped more than other countries that were subject to higher tariffs. From January to November 2018, South Korea's steel exports to the U.S. dropped 13% on year. That's a lot higher than other countries, including Japan and China, that recorded drops of 0.7% and 7.3% respectively. This all comes after Washington agreed to exempt 25% tariffs on steel imports from South Korea, but instead limited the amount of imports to the 70% level of the annual average Korean steel exports to the U.S. between 2015 and 2017. China and Japan opted to pay the higher tariffs. Washington's trade actions were carried out under Section 232 of the U.S. Trade Expansion Act. A separate analysis by the Militaries Center, a think tank at George Mason University, pointed out that countries that chose tariffs were able to lessen the damage by getting more tariff exclusions on certain products. Although South Korea did apply for exclusions, the requests were filed later than China and Japan. Watchers say the analysis calls into question the South Korean government's decision to choose quotas instead of higher tariffs. 고르니, Arirang News.
National Assembly Speaker Moon Hee-sang and the floor leaders of Korea's 5 major parties gathered earlier today, hoping to normalize parliament and open the February extraordinary session. But once again, they failed to do so. The ruling bloc wants the session to open without any preconditions. The main opposition is demanding a parliamentary investigation into former ruling party lawmaker Son Ae-won, who is under fire for alleged involvement in speculative investments. If the two sides can't reach a deal in the coming days, pending bills on flexible working hours and the minimum wage, which should be put up for a vote in February, would have to wait until next month's session. Incheon Airport rose 2 spots to be ranked 5th in the world in terms of international passenger numbers. The ranking is by the Airport Council International, a representative group for the industry. In 2018, the nation's main gateway handled nearly 68 million people on international flights, a 10% on-year spike. This was mainly thanks to the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, greater international air routes, and the growth of low-cost carriers. Incheon International Airport expects the number to rise by about 7.7% annually to more than 73 million this year. Dubai set atop that ranking, followed by London, Hong Kong, and Amsterdam. A special exhibition is held to mark the 100th anniversary of the March 1st independence movement and establishment of the Korea Provisional Government. The Cultural Heritage Administration presented a rare collection of personal items, letters, and documents belonging to independence fighters. Lee Min-sun takes us to Seodaemun Prison History Hall.
At this historic place where Korean independence activists were tortured and executed during the 1910 to 1945 Japanese colonial period, cultural assets are on display to show people the lives and background of those activities. A poem written by Hwang Hyun just before he killed himself in protest against Japan's invasion, and his collection of newspaper articles about fellow independence activists are on public display for the first time. Registered as pieces of cultural heritage last year, 2 handwritten poems by national poet and independence activist Lee Hyok-chol are also on display. These are the only 2 handwritten poems of his that are known to still exist. Some of the items show the independence activities of Lee Bong-chang. These include a letter he wrote before attempting to kill Japanese Emperor Hirohito with a grenade, and a bank record showing funds used to support his activities. Visitors can also look through some almost 5,000 personal information cards and prison records of independence activists who were imprisoned for fighting against the Japanese. This collection of personal information cards includes some 230 activists from North Korea and 33 female activists who are not well known. These cards provide photos and detailed information on their activities and show that people from all ages, genders, and regions played significant roles in the March 1st movement.
This exhibition commemorates the centennial of the March 1st movement, the largest anti-Japanese movement in Korea's history. We want to share the historic meaning with all people through pieces of cultural heritage.
This exhibition runs till April 21st. To preserve the cultural properties, the originals will only be displayed on the opening day, March 1st and April 11th, the anniversary of the establishment of the provisional government. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, our first full moon of the year is up and shining, but it is yet to be at its fullest, I heard.
Yes, Daniel, although today is 정월 대보름, the day when the first and brightest full moon of the year dominates the sky, the actual spectacle will happen after midnight. But if you are planning on still waiting until past midnight to get a glimpse of this phenomenon, be aware as it will become increasingly cloudy. And the clouds won't stay though, and by tomorrow afternoon they'll be gone. But that eventually will bring in some unwanted guests, which is fine dust. And meanwhile, Tokyo continues to be under rainy weather and unusual warm readings. And the morning temperatures will be a tad lower than today. Seoul will kick off at -1 degree Celsius tomorrow, while most of the southern areas will wake up into positive territory. However, the daily highs will be 1 to 4 degrees warmer than today. Seoul reaches up to 5 degrees, and the southern regions will see double-digit readings. And it seems like we're already transitioning into spring, as later this week, Seoul's high is expected to get into the low teens. Now, I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
These are the stories we're following at this hour. From all of us here at Arirang News Center, thank you for watching.